Good morning, everyone. I'm very much excited to give a presentation today, even though it's a keynote speaker, and I just know that I have the time allocation about 10 to 15 minutes, but I'm going to skip some slides that I prepare because I prepared this slide for my talk last week that I gave a presentation at the Mahidol University on the topics of ethics, climate change, and the energy. And the audience are in a great variety, so it was quite difficult for me to prepare the talk, ranging from the IPCC member on renewable energy to the monks, to Bhikkhuni, and international audience from many universities to talk on the Muslim perspective on climate change and the Christian perspective, that kind of thing. But I have to admit that for the event today, for the seminar today, is also quite difficult for me to prepare my talk because we have full of key distinguished participants from key research institutes and key researchers, and many of you I know, and many of you used to hear my talk in some points before. But before I start, I just would like to tell you about the message that I would like to send today. Just like before you see the movie, I just would like to give you or sending you the message kind of synopsis before what is the idea I'm going to speak with. It's about the message that what's going on in the global trends nowadays, in the past, now, and in the future. What happens in terms of the climate change global trends, and how could this have the implications to Thailand, implementation, and what we are up to in response to the climate change, to the global climate change. However, I come from Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization, so my talk will be more heavily in the mitigation, but I will touch a little bit on the adaptation only. But we have a lot of distinguished researchers in this area, so I will skip quite a few slides. The whole idea, from my understanding about the global trends nowadays on climate change, many people talk about setting the target. So setting the target can be implied to, from the global level, we call it the global goal, about the 2 degrees Celsius, that kind of thing. And then set the target and implement it and measure it, report it. So that is the whole idea. It's not that difficult, but it's just the concept that anything that can be measured, you can manage that thing. So that is the synopsis of my whole talk today, and let's go through. The first question that I'm going to let you see is what science say on climate change impacts and adaptation in Asia, so getting closer to us. The key message from the IPCC, the working group 2, mentioned that in Asia, warming trends and increasing temperature extremes have been observed across most of the Asian region, and also mentioned that the water scarcity is expected to be a major challenge for most of the region, resulting from the lack of good management and the increase of the water demand. Another message from IPCC AR5 is the impacts of climate change will have on the food production and the food security in Asia. And also the extreme climate events will have increasing impact on human health, security, livelihood, and poverty. I think that in these 2 days, you are going to hear quite a few messages reflecting on these issues. So I'll skip the IPCC slide a little bit. And just to let you see briefly about the picture of how much of the impact of climate change posed to Thailand's natural resource and environment. Just some severe floods in Thailand, and these cause the loss and damage in terms of the economy as well, social and economy dimension. So all in all, when we talk about the climate change and tackling this problem, we have to talk about, of course, the greenhouse gases that is the reason of this towards global warming and the climate change. So understanding that how much we emit, I mean all the countries in this world, from the IPCC in 2004, every country emit together the greenhouse gases about 49 million tons CO2 equivalent, and it's increasing. In terms of the gases, major type of gas is the CO2, and the source are the energy supply and the energy business and the transport industry, forestry and agriculture. I think that everyone knows this message. So I just talk and reminding about something which is the basis of why we are tackling this problem. So countries get together and say, oh, we have to do something in terms of managing this global crisis. So the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change had the talk many years. Luckily, or I'm not sure that unluckily, I had been involved in these talks actually since COP10 in Argentina. And this Saturday I'm going there again in Lima, Peru. So that's why I have been preparing that to speak with the distinguished researchers. How can I give you more value to add to your research? So I think that, okay, I'll talk about this topic that the world is changing, and it changed in terms of the natural resource and environment that I talked previously about the vulnerabilities and the impacts of climate change, and the change in another thing, which is the change in terms of the world's regulations, rules, and the new agreement that is going to happen to deal with the problem. Here comes the target that I mentioned. The target in terms of the global level, this is a global goal. It was set in the year 2010 in Cancun, Mexico. The COP decided to set the global goal to hold the increase in global average temperature below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And then that means the countries have to be responsible to enhance their mitigation actions and reporting, as well as increasing adaptive capabilities to the impacts of climate change. So what does it mean for the 2 degrees Celsius? So I think that many of you already read this or research on this. So I just would like to reflect again that from the UNEP emission gap report, the 2 degrees Celsius means this is what we want in the year 2020. The emissions, the global emissions, have to be peaked and decreased. That means in order to meet the 2 degrees Celsius, of which is our global goal. And the reality is the 2 degrees Celsius global goal, if we do not do anything, just let it happen, make it business as usual. Why? I have to do it, let others do that. So the global emission will just reach about 56 million tons CO2 equivalent in 2020. But what we need is 44 million tons CO2 equivalent in that year. So the climate change, the convention, and that's why they invite parties, either they are developed countries or developing countries, to submit their pledge that let's say this is the year that we would like to see your pledge or submissions. what you are going to do from now up to 2020. Here comes the target setting. So the target setting, developed countries, like about 40 countries already submitted their pledge, but their pledge is called economy-wide emission reduction targets. And the developing countries pledge is called NAMAs, or nationally appropriate mitigation actions. So, but all in all, we still have some emission gap that we need some more contributions to do something, the mitigation from now up to 2020. And not only this, something like the target that the convention still need is a target which is under another name, the INDC, or intended nationally determined contribution. Lots of abbreviations are invited to parties to submit their pledge, what they intend to do beyond the year 2020. So this is the whole idea about setting the target, implement it, measure it, and report it. So this is the evolution. From time to time, now the new agreement under the UNFCCC is going to happen. How? I divided that the developed countries' commitment are above here in the blue color, and the developing countries' commitment and implementation is here in the green color. So before, in the past until the year 2012, developed countries, they have some commitments under the UNFCCC and the Kyoto Protocol for some parties who are the party to the Kyoto Protocol. So they implement under that Kyoto Protocol. But from the year 2012 to 2020, the UNFCCC invited the developed countries to submit their economy-wide emission reduction targets, and also enhanced reporting, greenhouse gas reporting, which is called biennial report. And it has to have the international assessment and review, or the IAR, to the biennial report. But in terms of developing countries like us, in the past, before 2012, we implemented in terms of voluntary basis, supported, and we can do the CDM under this convention and the protocol. However, things are changed. This is about the change. The change that we are in at this moment, developing countries are invited to submit something, the target, which is called nationally appropriate mitigation actions. So is MA, mitigation actions that you see appropriate with your country. So you submit that what you are going to do until 2020. But this is still voluntary. And the NAMAs can be supported by technology, finance, and capacity building. But if you do the mitigation actions in your country, like in Thailand, it has to be in a measurable, reportable, and verifiable manner. So this is the MRV, or measure, measure, and measure. Not only that, when the developed countries have the biennial report, we also have to conduct our biennial update report, or the BUR as well. And it has to be reviewed in terms of the international consultation and analysis. This is an ICA, but the IAR is for the biennial update report, so it has some differences. But things change after 2020, and we call it pre-2020 and post-2020. So what will be happen in the next few years? After 2020, there will be something enforced, which is currently called the 2015 agreement, to be applicable to all parties from 2020. This is quite important because the new agreement is expected to be the legally binding agreement. So when it is a legally binding agreement, this is something different because I'll explain a little bit. The UNFCCC is not the legally binding agreement. The Kyoto Protocol under the convention, the Kyoto Protocol is the legally binding, that's why it's called protocol. And now we are under the negotiation for the new world's rules. So something expected to be the agreement for the post-2020, this is going to be the legally binding agreement applicable to all parties. So it is under the negotiation under the ADP, the Ad hoc Working Group on the Durban Platform for Enhanced Action. And this new draft, like the draft agreement or the draft negotiating text, is expected to be adopted by the Conference of the Parties at its 21st session in next year in Paris. So in terms of the Thailand's response on the climate change mitigation, so I'm gearing to the mitigation more. So knowing about what's happening in the world, so knowing more about what's happening in Thailand. And the Thailand's emission profile in the year 2000, I grabbed this from the official information from the Thailand's national communication, or the second national communication. The sources from the ONEP, or the Office of National Resources and Environmental Policy and Planning, and ONEP is a national focal point for the UNFCCC in Thailand. So knowing our emission profile, energy is the main sector of emission sector, about 70% from the power generation, from the power usage, energy use in industry, in buildings, and energy use in transport. So I always say, just easily to remember, there are three giants in terms of energy, where they are from. The energy industry, and the energy use, and the energy use in transport. This is energy use in the industry and the construction and the buildings, and energy use in transport, but this is about the power generation. So knowing how much we emit and knowing our trends, you can see that from our study, the trends, the emission trends is going up high and high. Is there any peak before 2050 in Thailand? I'm not sure. Before we reaching the peak, it has to slow down, peak, and going down. But from the current forecast or projection, still going up like this. This is like the BAU. While the global goal, it has to have the picture like that. So we have to see that in terms of the management or the implementation on, for the mitigation, greenhouse gas mitigation. I will talk just a little bit on the climate, Thailand's policies related to climate change mitigation. But Professor Wongkot will speak more on the energy policies and plans. So I'll just go very briefly because I have, I think, about 3 minutes more. So the main national plan in Thailand is the 11th National Economic and Social Development Plan up to 2016. The key measures also mentioned paradigm shift, that's what we need. Environmental friendly society and the low carbon economy. And we have to move our production and services towards environmental friendly society, and reinforce urban environment and infrastructure management, and also mention about the establishment of voluntary domestic carbon market. 1 minute, thank you. Another thing is the country strategy. So we talk about the green growth for the movement in terms of our policy towards the future. Green growth, what we need is the economic growth and the good quality of life and reduce greenhouse gas. So 3 sectoral plans that we are going to do the greenhouse gas mitigations include the Alternative Energy Development Plan, or AEDP, and the Energy Efficiency Development Plan, or EEDP, and the Transport Plan. So we use these few plans, sectoral plans, to work out on Thailand's target, or NAMAs, what we are going to do from now up to 2020. So these are our foundation to work on the numbers. I'll skip this again because this is the AEDP and EEDP, and Professor Wongkot will speak more. So are we preparing the Thailand's NAMAs to submit our country's pledge? Yes. And what will be the number of the 2020 mitigation pledge? Just one slide. Based on 3 sectoral plans, 2 from this is renewable energy and energy efficiency and the transport plan, and Thailand can have the number in terms of the NAMAs and through the countermeasures. For example, we will do the renewable energy, biomass, biogas, hydro, solar, wind, waste to energy, which is the national agenda at this moment. Energy efficiency in buildings, transport, industry, biofuels, the environmentally sustainable transport system, and the number is in the range of 7 to 20% based on energy and transport sector below the business as usual level by the year 2020. And this is on the way that Thai Minister General Dapong Ratanasuwan, Minister of Environment, is going to announce Thailand pledge of the NAMAs to the Conference of the Parties in Lima in Peru in these few days. I think it's on the 10th of December, our Constitution Day. The last one, what would be the roles of Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization? What can we do to contribute to Thailand's mitigation of greenhouse gas? We were established in 2007, originally to be the designated national authority for the implementation of the CDM, or the Clean Development Mechanism, under the Kyoto Protocol, but we grow up. For 6 years, we were established to be the DNA CDM, but now we grow up to be the organization, to be the certified body for the greenhouse gas mitigation. If you have the projects, or either you are the public sector, or either you are the private sector, or you are from the university, and if you have your greenhouse gas mitigation projects, so you can submit to TGO to get the certified, the certificate, and if it can be measured, so we have the methodology to calculate, and we would give you the certificate. And we generate 2 mechanisms. One, the project-based mechanism, which is called the TVER, or the Thailand Voluntary Emission Reduction. This is intended to be part of the market mechanism, or generate carbon credits, but voluntary basis. And another one, which is more in terms of the corporate social responsibility, but does not generate the carbon credits to be traded, but to enhance the image of your institute, the image of your organization, that, hey, I have been doing something good and it can be calculated. So this could be certified, but not to lead to the carbon trading. So this is called low emission supporting scheme. So these are the activities that you can do, ranging from the energy, waste management, and the transport. And the carbon level, so we have our own system for the issuing the carbon footprint for the products. These are the numbers of the products applied, and carbon footprint reduction, and the carbon footprint for local government authorities. Many local authorities apply for the carbon footprint for organization, and the COMOD. So these are our products. And we just established the Climate Change Training Center, International Training Center, and we hope that we can offer the service not only to the Thai stakeholders, but to the ASEAN stakeholders as well. So our profile of capacity building was, over the past few years, were about 3,000 participants. And the last service that TGO can do for the country is on the greenhouse gas information. Either it would be the greenhouse gas emission data or the reduction information and the registry system for the carbon trade. So this is all prepared for my talk today, and I hope that it would be somehow useful for your research, and still would like to congratulate you for your good collaboration among researchers, distinguished researchers in Thailand and in the GMS, and I wish you all very successful outcome from this event and also in the further collaboration. Thank you very much.